Hello, I'm Martin, and welcome to Short Stories, brought to you by the National Taichung University of Science and Technology Language Center. Today's short story is called Egla, the Queen of the Serpents. This is a Lithuanian fairy tale that is popular throughout the Baltic region. In fact, there are probably over 100 variations of this story. It's about a princess who marries a very unusual prince. Due to time restrictions, we won't hear the full story today in today's video. We will hear a short version that I have written for you. Before I begin the story, I will tell you the vocabulary and example sentences. After the story, I will read 4 listening comprehension questions. Let's get started.
Vocabulary. Keep to oneself. Keep to oneself. She was a shy woman who kept to herself. Perverted. Perverted. She thought Bill had a lot of perverted ideas. Flattered. Flattered. He felt flattered to receive the award. Embarrassment. Embarrassment. Her mistake made her feel great embarrassment. Commotion. Commotion. He asked what all the commotion was about. Flabbergasted. Flabbergasted. He was flabbergasted when he heard the shocking news. Sheepishly. Sheepishly. She smiled sheepishly during the ceremony. Misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. The misunderstanding between the two governments caused a war.
The story. A long, long time ago in Lithuania, there lived a beautiful princess named Egla. She had long copper-colored hair, green eyes, and a slender neck. Many princes in the area wanted to marry her, but she refused them all. She preferred to keep to herself and was very nervous at social gatherings. Every morning she would go bathing in a lagoon not far from the castle. When Egla went bathing, she would always leave her clothes on the grass. She preferred to go alone as she was very shy. One day, after she finished bathing, she reached for her clothes, only to find that a poisonous sea snake was resting on them. "Yikes!" she cried. She became even more surprised when the snake started speaking. "Hello, my lady. I am Zilvinus, king of the sea snakes," he said. "You can talk?" said the shocked princess. "I can do many things," said the snake. He continued, "I have watched you for many months bathing in this lagoon." Egla frowned and said, "Ew, you've been watching me bathe? That's perverted." The snake cleared his throat and said, "Let me finish. I have watched you and noticed how much you love the sea and the creatures living in it. I saw you help the baby sea turtles crawl into the ocean, feed the seabirds crumbs, and even free a crab from a trap. Surely you must love the sea as much as I do. That's why I have fallen in love with you." Egla was surprised to hear this and didn't know how to respond. After a moment of stunned silence, she said, "I'm flattered, but could you get off my clothes, please? I'm cold and naked." The snake didn't move and replied, "I'll move if you agree to marry me in 3 days." "What? yelled Egla. She was becoming very anxious. Soon her father and his friends would pass the lagoon on their morning ride. She didn't want them to see her naked. She would die of embarrassment. Egla begged the snake, but he wouldn't budge. Finally, she gave up and agreed to marry the snake. "Oh, thank you, sweet princess. You have made me the happiest snake in the world," said the snake. The princess smiled nervously as she put her on her clothes. As Egla walked home, she thought to herself, "There's no way I'm marrying a reptile. Maybe if I pretend it didn't happen, it will go away." 3 days later, Egla awoke to the sound of commotion. "What's going on?" she asked her servant. Then she looked out the window overlooking the castle gate and saw an army of snakes. "The time has arrived, princess, for you to marry our king," shouted one of the snakes. She watched in horror as they wriggled under the gate and into the castle courtyard. Egla ran to her father to ask him what his plan was. He was flabbergasted and admitted that he didn't have a plan because he didn't think anything like this would happen. "What did you do?" he asked the king. Egla sheepishly explained how she had accidentally agreed to marry the king of sea snakes because she was too embarrassed. The king frowned and said, "Don't worry. I won't let some serpent take away my only daughter." The lead snake, who was the royal messenger, lifted up his head and announced, "We demand fulfillment of the bargain the princess made with our king. Please bring her out at once." The king and the princess came up with a hasty plan. They dressed up a cow in Egla's clothes, and 2 guards brought it out into the courtyard. The king announced from the balcony, "Here is your king's bride. It is with a heavy heart that I give her away, but I trust that your king is kind." The snakes thanked him and carried the confused cow away toward the lagoon. "Phew," said Egla. "Good thing snakes aren't very smart." The snakes slithered toward the ocean. They passed under a tree. In that tree was a cuckoo who said, "You silly snakes, what are you doing with that cow?" The messenger snake said that the cow was the princess and that she was going to marry their king. The cuckoo laughed. "You idiots, they tricked you. That's not the princess." If snakes could blush, that messenger would have been bright red with embarrassment and rage. The snakes dropped the cow and went back to the castle. "What, again?" said Egla when she saw the snakes returning. The messenger snake hissed, "Sss! We demand the real princess. If we do not get her, we will cause a tidal wave that will destroy this castle and everyone in it." Now the king and Egla were panicking. They didn't know what to do. Finally, Egla said, "I'll go. This is all my fault. I don't want anyone to die because of me." She went out the gate and let the snakes escort her to the sea. Egla walked slowly toward her fate. She thought of what to say to the Snake King. Maybe she could explain to him how this was all a misunderstanding. Certainly, even he can see that this relationship isn't going to work, she said to herself. To her surprise, when she arrived at the lagoon, she was greeted by a handsome young man. "Hello, my lady," he said with a welcoming smile. "Who are you?" asked Egla. "Don't you remember? I'm Zilvinus. I told you I could do many things, including changing myself into a human to make you more comfortable." Egla wasn't sure if she should be flattered by this, but she was glad that she wouldn't be marrying a snake. Maybe this won't be so bad after all, she told herself. The two were married right there on the beach. After the ceremony, Zilvinus picked up Egla and carried her into the sea. Don't worry, my dear. My magic will allow you to live underwater with me. And that is exactly what they did. The two lived in Zilvinus's palace under the waves for many happy years. Egla even bore 4 children. Azulas, her first son, Uosis, her second son, Berzus, her third son, and Drebule, her only daughter. There are more stories to tell of Egla and her children, but they will have to wait for another time. Questions. Number 1. What did Egla do every morning? A. She went bathing in the sea. B. She went for a morning ride. C. She exercised. D. She ate snake soup. The answer is A. She went bathing in the sea. Question 2. Why did Egla agree to marry the king of sea snakes? A. She loved snakes. B. She wanted to make her father angry. C. Her father asked her to do it. D. She was too embarrassed to say no. The answer is D. She was too embarrassed. Question 3. How did the king trick the snakes? A. He gave them a cuckoo instead of the princess. B. He gave them a cow instead of the princess. C. He dressed up as the princess. D. He told them the princess had died. The answer is B. He gave them a cow instead of the princess. Question 4. What happened in the end? A. Egla married Zilvinus and was happy. B. Egla married Zilvinus and was not happy. C. Egla ran away. D. Egla turned into a snake. The answer is A. She married him and was happy. Well, that concludes today's short story. I hope you learned a valuable lesson from the story, which is that sometimes it's better to be direct and upfront about your feelings rather than to feel ashamed or embarrassed. So it's important to overcome your social anxiety every now and then. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.